Hello and welcome to our EtonHouse Parenting Webinar series. Thank you for joining us today during your lunch break. We'd like to kick off by inviting you to check out our poll. We are wondering, what are the top challenges you face when trying to communicate with your children? Feel free to click on the drop-down menu while we get started together. It's really my pleasure to host our session today alongside my wonderful colleague Chai Yun and also Natalie. Hi, Natalie. My name is Lisa and I am the Senior Principal at EtonHouse Sentosa. I've had the pleasure of being part of the EtonHouse family since 2005 and I'm now really enjoying my 19th year, I believe, if I've calculated correctly, on this beautiful journey in Singapore. At home, I'm also a proud mum to my son, who is now 8 years old. So getting back to the webinar today and our parenting series, this space really allows parents to unite as we move through our parenting journey together. As a fellow parent, I would like to call out that we might often feel immense pressure to be the perfect mum or dad, but this is an unattainable target and we really want to squash that with you today. Our webinar series allows us to look at engaging together as we explore the realities of parenting. We can celebrate triumphs and also share in our challenges together. And the challenges really allow us to re-explore what works best for us and also our unique children. Let's remember that owning and talking about challenges really makes fellow parents feel relieved, and it's nice for us all to know that we're not alone. So today, the topic, power of language, really allows us to look at how we can nurture meaningful conversations with young children. It allows us as parents to build our tool belt of strategies, and it will also lighten the load on your parenting journey. And we hope as a result, it makes our time with our children more enjoyable and impactful. So again, just inviting you to check out our poll and click down on the drop-down menu regarding the top challenges you face when you are trying to communicate with your children. We would love to hear from you. So before we go further, I would just like to run through a few housekeeping points to best support all our viewers today. So please do access the chat function and add your questions or clarifications. We will do our very best to get to that if time allows. If we don't get to your questions or clarifications, rest assured we will be responding to them after the webinar today. And also a huge thank you if you have already submitted your questions. That has allowed us to develop our content and we will address as much as we can throughout the course of this webinar. So enough from me at the moment, and I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleagues Chai Yun and also Miss Natalie to say hello. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chai Yun, and I'm currently the Senior Center Leader at eBridge Preschool. So this is my 15th year in early childhood education and my 8th year in eBridge. I am also a mother of 2 boys, aged 2.5 years and 8 months. I am delighted to be here today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie, and I'm a Senior Principal at EtonHouse Upper Bukit, Timah. I have been with the EtonHouse family alongside with Lisa for many years. This is my 12th year. When I am not at work, my other full-time job is being a mom to 2 toddlers, age 1.5 and 3.5 years old.
Fantastic. Very excited to be sharing alongside you today, ladies. So starting with our first focus around moving beyond short answers together with our children. So often we might wonder why children resort to short answers, and we might begin to explore how we can help them move beyond their typical yes/no responses. And often we might wonder, is this a stage or are there deeper factors at play? Chai Yun, would you like to kick off with this?
Yes, sure, Lisa. So for young children, their vocabulary and language skills are really still developing, and they usually feel more comfortable with simple responses. This is perfectly normal. So children are learning to express their thoughts and ideas well, and there are a lot of things going on in their minds, and they may not have the skills to articulate these in words. So when we ask children questions, we can influence their responses. We want to move beyond yes and no answers by asking open-ended questions that invite children to share more. So these questions will encourage our children to think critically, express themselves fully, and also contribute to meaningful conversations. It's also important for us to give time to children to respond and give them time to process and think through what we ask them. Because sometimes when we ask questions, we tend to repeat the same question until the child answers us. I'm also guilty of this as well. So when we remind ourselves to really pause and think, let them think through the answer before responding to us, we can see that they can actually articulate better. Educators and parents can also support children in expanding their responses by modeling expressive language, providing prompts and a safe and supportive environment for the children to feel valued and encouraged to express themselves.
Thank you for that, Chai Yun. I know that Natalie also has lots of experience in this area, especially with show and tell, to move beyond those yes/no responses. Nat, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with what Chai Yun has mentioned. Sometimes the way that we frame our questions to the children matter to how they respond to us. And certain real life experiences that we have seen in school is that the teachers use a different kind of technique when they interact with children. And I am a firm believer of the inquiry-based learning approach, which we embrace at EtonHouse and at eBridge. And there are often misconceptions that inquiry is a subject rather than a mindset. And that actually shapes our approach to learning. And, this whole inquiry mindset, it's the way that we engage in conversations and the way that we approach various topics. And our educators who embody this mindset, they use different strategies to prompt children to think a little bit deeper. And it inculcates an environment that fosters exploration and discovery. So the first strategy that I've observed teachers would be posing open-ended questions to encourage children to think before responding. So rather than asking a closed-ended question like, do you like this book? They might inquire, could you share some of your favorite parts of the book with me? So this approach actually encourages children to reflect on their experiences and formulate a more developed answer before responding. And, if a child responds with a brief answer, teachers can use a second strategy known as prompting statements to probe further into the children's thinking. It could start like, tell me more about this, or what do you think of this? And I've seen the effectiveness of these methods in action as teachers implement them within our school community, particularly during activities like group discussions or show and tell sessions. And show and tell is always a hit with both teachers and children. It's a special time to celebrate what each child has to share. And teachers offer children the choice whether to share it in a large group or small group setting, depending on the child's comfort level. And we have seen remarkable transformations, such as a once anxious child gradually gaining confidence to express his thoughts in front of the entire class. And teachers also consistently provide a positive and encouraging environment, giving children a lot of appreciation. So regardless of the child's answer, the teacher would commend their effort, affirm their ability to contribute, and motivate them to elaborate further on their answers. So, this just puts everything together about how important the roles of the teachers play in instilling confidence and giving a secure environment for children to express themselves.
Thank you for that, Natalie. It was lovely to see the images there as well. Just took me back to how we could transport the show and tell to our home environment as well, with interesting artifacts or objects. Sometimes mum or dad could kickstart the show and tell, to spur on the motivation, and then we can go from there together. So I could just imagine how you could also use those props in the home environment quite seamlessly. Really lovely example there. I've also noticed how when we're really presenting ourselves as curious with our children and we use curious statements, that encourages children to move beyond their yes/no replies. So statements such as, I wonder, or I'm really excited to find out more about, really hook our children because they can feel our invested disposition, and rather than them thinking that we're looking for a specific type of response. I really love what Chai Yun said as well. Chai Yun about practicing our pause with children. It reminds me that sometimes we often might leave quite short windows for our children to respond. And often they need a little bit longer to formulate their thoughts or reply. Or they might even want to use a non-verbal gesture to tell us how they're feeling. Research shows that leaving up to 10 seconds can really help a child structure their thinking and build their confidence to reply. But if we break down how long we often leave, it's usually just a few seconds, because 10 seconds is quite a long time in our day-to-day busy lives. And so it's interesting for us all to practice that pause, to maybe stop and mentally count to 10. It's longer than we actually think. And then we can maybe practice not jumping in so quickly and see what happens. So this brings us quite nicely to the next part of our sharing, where we're really considering the child's environment and how the environment plays such a significant part in encouraging more detailed responses. So aside from practicing our pause, Chai Yun, do you have any other tips for home for mums and dads?
Yeah, sure. So parents are children's first teachers, and this makes the home environment very important for children to develop their language skills. And parents can actually engage with children in conversation. So we want to see the children's age group. Depending on their age, if they are very young infants or toddlers, we can usually describe what the child is doing. For example, we can say, I can see you stacking the blocks. Oh, wow, you are drawing lots of lines. So this actually helps the child put words into the actions. And maybe the next time around, they will be the ones describing what they are doing to us. And for children who have communication skills, we also want to show genuine interest in their thoughts and experiences. We can do this by providing active listening to validate their thoughts and feelings. And we also want to respond to them thoughtfully. When we do this, we also demonstrate to children that we give them a safe and comfortable space to express themselves. It's also important for us to give language-rich and supportive environment. So we can do this by reading with the children, sharing stories, and discussing daily events with them. These are really great ways to promote language development and expressive communication too.
Thank you. I love what you said there about building a language-rich environment. That brings us quite nicely to our focus around encouraging expression with our children. And we all know that expression is so important. Fellow parents would definitely want to empower their child to become an engaging communicator. And there is an emphasis on this in our EtonHouse settings. We always prioritize our experiences and load them with lots of rich vocabulary. And so, Natalie, that brings us to think about at home. How can we leverage children's natural curiosity to build a rich vocabulary base, and also for them to articulate their thoughts and feelings more effectively? So a big question, but I know that you've got some pearls of wisdom there. Thanks, Nat.
Thank you, Lisa. I mean, I like it's not just about a child being a communicator, but it's an engaging communicator. And I think parents can first begin by embracing and celebrating curiosity. Often in our hectic schedules, we overlook this important aspect. We celebrate a child's curiosity by being receptive to exploring new topics and ideas that maybe they bring home or they have seen or they bring home from school. And this not only encourages inquisitiveness, but it cultivates a passion for learning, and it opens up avenues for engaging conversations between a parent and a child. And when it comes to discussion, I believe there is no limits to what a parent and child can explore. And once children are actively engaged, parents can seamlessly extend the conversation by following the child's lead. And by aligning with the child's interests, we can actually shape the discussion accordingly. So this involves attentive listening to what fascinates our children, expanding on that subject using more descriptive language. For instance, if a child mentions, "Hey, Mom, look at what I made a tower," we could respond by acknowledging their creation. Say, "Oh, I've seen that you've created a tall tower using colorful blocks." Or alternatively, you can encourage them to articulate their achievement by suggesting, "Oh, can you tell me a little bit more about the tall tower that you have built?" So, I mean, this is called, engaging communication. And once children feel engaged, they are more inclined to express themselves authentically. And it's important to also allow them the necessary time and space to articulate these thoughts without feeling rushed. It's important that we give them the time to formulate their ideas before they share.
Thanks, Natalie, for echoing the importance of time again. I think as parents in our busy lives, it's a great note to ourselves to slow down and to avoid the rush if we're really looking for children to offer their true selves in their responses. So thanks for that hearty reminder there. Chai Yun, I can see you're quite keen to tag in some further thoughts.
Yes, okay, so parents can actually leverage on the children's natural curiosity by incorporating language-rich activities into the children's daily interactions. So for example, when we go for walks or outings, parents can point out interesting objects or phenomena, and we want to encourage the children to describe what they see, what they hear, or what they feel. And then we can also ask them open-ended questions like, oh, what do you think would happen if this happened? Why do you think this and this happened? So these open-ended questions actually prompts the children to think critically and to express their thoughts. And while we introduce new words in context and encourage the children to use them in their own sentence, it helps them to build the vocabulary. So these provide the children a supportive environment to build strong language skills and confidence in articulating themselves.
Thanks for that lovely spotlight there around open-ended questions. I know at this stage some mums and dads might be wondering, well, how do I craft them effectively for different age groups or maybe different situations? Chai Yun, would you like to build on that a little bit for us?
Lisa, can you repeat your question?
Sorry, just saying that you had such a great point there regarding open-ended questions and the importance of them. I was just thinking that some of our mums and dads at home might be wondering, well, how do I craft an effective open-ended question? And, would it differ for different age groups or different situations?
Yes, so for example, for younger children, sometimes we want to ask them simple questions that require concrete answers. For example, what did you enjoy at the park today? Tell me about your favorite toy. So as children grow older, sometimes we want to expand the question to be a bit more complex and abstract. We want to encourage them to think deeper and reflect a little bit more. For instance, we can ask them like, how do you think the character in the story felt? What would you do differently if you were in that situation?
Thank you very much, Chai Yun, for those great tips and practical examples. Just adding in a little bit more there, I've found personally that a really great question that allows a safe response for children would be, can you show me? And that's quite an inclusive question because it allows children who are verbal or who might still be in the non-verbal stage to show us their thinking and what they mean. For example, recently on campus, a little one approached me in the corridor and was clearly bursting to give me an update about something that just happened in the dining hall. And when I said, can you show me? He took my hand and brought me to the dining hall and pointed to the spoon that had just dropped on the floor. And then the language started to flow. So we talked about the spoon, what happened, where does it live, how can we problem solve the situation? So again, can you show me? Just opens up other ways for children to take our hand and bring us to the spot or point to the thing that they're bursting to share more about. And then we can narrate and expand the sentences from there. So on that note of expanding, I know that Natalie, Chai Yun and myself are huge fans of storytelling and pretend play. That really gets the language flowing and encourages rich exchanges between adults and children. And so, Natalie, would you like to kickstart by unpacking this a little bit further for us?
Yes, thanks, Lisa. So I just thought about reading, it just unpacks so much imagination and creativity. So while shared reading is an excellent method for fostering language skills, Engaging in creative storytelling and pretend play experiences additionally nurtures the creative thinking aspect and also expands children's imaginative capabilities. And this encourages children to create their own stories. It empowers them to contribute their ideas and shapes the narrative. It also gives children a sense of autonomy when it comes to storytelling. So in our bedtime routine at home with my children, we always include a variety of storytelling experiences. So this could include reading storybooks in both English and Mandarin, listening to audiobooks, and engaging in creative storytelling sessions. And although visuals play a significant role in storytelling, we find that audiobooks also offer a valuable training in the listening comprehension. And occasionally, my son challenges us by requesting a story created entirely from our imagination. This has proved to be such a tall order. He will dictate the characters that will be starred in this story, example, himself and a friend, and the setting of the story, which might be in a park, and the climax of the story, him cycling really quickly, him falling and needing to call the ambulance to rescue him. So this is where parenting meets improv theater. You know, this collaborative storytelling not only sparks creativity, but it also strengthens the bond between, you know, a parent and a child through shared imagination and storytelling adventures. And my son also loves pretend play. So particularly in dressing up as emergency personnel like firefighters, paramedics, police officers, and at home we strive to fully engage him in his role. This also will allow his imagination to run wild. And while the costumes and the props really enhance his play experience, we realize that his love for pretend play truly soared when he had supporting roles to interact with. So if supporting roles like his dad and myself, you know, we would often join as casualties or a person in a burning building, you know, in need of help. And this all adds the depth and realism to his imaginative scenarios.
Thank you for that, Natalie. I would love to be there one evening and join in that storytelling experience together. It sounds like great fun. I think it's a lovely reminder for us to inject ourselves into the story as well with our little ones. They would love to hear that dad has become a character or mum has become a character and that they are involved in that story as well. So it's a nice reminder to be brave and just go with the flow, and that we might not always need a book to guide our story time. Chai Yun, would you like to add on to this lovely area with our storytelling?
Yes, sure, Lisa. So I totally agree with Natalie's sharing, and it actually brings me back to my memory when I was constantly doing storytelling at bedtime with my son too. So recently he is very into this book called The Boy Who Dared to Dream, and every night he asks for the same book to be read to him. We actually make the characters come alive by doing pretend play. So for example, the characters row a boat to pick up fruits from the lake, and then we pretend to row the boat and I'll be the one picking up the fruit from the lake, and he actually wants to count the number of fruits he picked up. Another story that we really enjoy recently is going on a bear hunt. So going on a bear hunt has a lot of action words, and when they have to tiptoe into the cave, we also tiptoe into the cave, whisper, and then when they have the forest, they will stumble, trip, and then we pretend to walk and move like the characters in the story. So this actually brings the story alive and make meaning for the children to understand the story a bit better. Other than pretend play, we can also do props. So for example, children can pretend to wear some fireman cap, helmet, construction worker costume and all that to narrate the stories.
Thank you for layering that there. When you was talking about the bear hunt story and the stumble trip, and the importance of taking on different characters, it really made me think about how through all of this, we're continuing to encourage empathy and building our children's emotional intelligence. And there's often no better way of doing that than through storytelling and pretend play, because then you're allowed to position yourself differently and think about how that character feels, or what would you do to make them feel better. For example, if you had a stumble trip, how would that feel, and how could you help the character feel better in the story? How would you change it so that you didn't stumble and trip? And that again encourages lots of lovely conversation and sharing together. I know that Natalie Chai Yun, you echo with me that we place a huge emphasis on empathy and emotional intelligence in our school, and equipping children with language to articulate that. I'm just wondering about some tips that we can offer mums and dads for home, so that this can be nurtured through conversation outside of school as well. Chai Yun, would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, so I think parents can really ask a lot of prompts to the children. Tell me more about this and that. Can you explain why? And then we want to help the children to elaborate their responses. We also want to help them to tailor the questions to the children's interests and experiences. So we really know our children the best, and when we know what they're interested in, for example, they're really interested in animals, we want to ask questions relating to that. Aside from that, I think we can also provide children the opportunity to develop empathy and emotional intelligence by relating to others' feelings. So parents can actually help the children to develop empathy through conversations by modeling empathy themselves, actively listening to the children's experiences, and also validate their emotions. Parents can also encourage the children to express their own feelings and perspective. So this actually helps a child to develop their own self-awareness and empathy towards others. For example, we can ask them, how do you think the children feel? How do you think the animals feel? How would you feel if you were the girl? So by using storytelling or role-playing activities, we can help children to explore different emotions or perspectives. And also we want the children to develop valuable social and emotional skills that helps them to build positive relationships with others.
Thank you very much. When you gave that lovely example there around how do you think the children felt, it made me think about how sometimes children might not always respond in that moment, and that might leave us a bit unsure around what to do next as mums and dads, or even as educators. And again, it just jumps back to the beginning of our webinar where we said to practice the pause. Sometimes children are symbolically shaping their thoughts, and they're still framing it. They might not always offer a verbal response, but the more that we offer those open-ended questions, those curious statements, the more that those responses will eventually come. And there's nothing wrong with, after the pause, sharing what you think. Well, I think the children might have felt this way. I wonder what you think. And then again, just leaving another pause, a natural pause. If there is no response, then moving on to the next part of your interaction. So that brings us to some practical tips and some practical tools for building language. I know that mums and dads have busy schedules, and so it's nice maybe to share some ideas that can easily be implemented, and sometimes maybe with shorter pockets of time. So Chai Yun, would you like to offer some proposals around this, some practical takeaways?
Yeah, sure. So at home, actually, we can create a word wall. So for example, when children learn new words, we can actually encourage them to draw or prepare photos to represent those words. So this word wall are actually built to a long list eventually when the children continue to add on to the words they learn. Another great activity will be scavenger hunt around the house or neighborhood. And this can be incorporated into asking children to find objects based on the descriptive cues you provide for them. Additionally, you can also read stories with the children to discuss unfamiliar words used in those books, and for children to guess their meanings, to actually expand their vocabulary in a natural and enjoyable way.
Thank you. I love the idea of the scavenger hunts. They're a great tip and can definitely be played anywhere. The shopping mall, at home, on the aeroplane. So that's a really lovely idea. Natalie, would you like to grow our list and help us add some more ideas into the tool bank?
Yes, I mean, it looks like, one of my tip was also a scavenger hunt. It just seems like all the parents are going to be playing scavenger hunts this weekend. But yeah, I mean, I was just looking at the poll, and 53% was talking about their top challenge was busy schedules. And we are constantly thinking of ways where we don't have to do additional work or preparation in order to have meaningful conversations with our children. And being a busy mom myself, and having two young toddlers, I mean, I'm always strapped for time. And I just figured, like, new vocabulary through games, word associations, and even scavenger hunts, like what Chai Yun has mentioned. It can be done over the weekend, whether you're going on a nature walk. And this is something that my family does. We live near the rail corridor, so we often take walks at the nature trail. And my son does take his child camera along to capture photos of things of interest along the way. So these are additional tools that maybe you can bring along to enhance that conversation. So this activity not only helps him to focus on the details, but it also gives an excellent opportunity to introduce new vocabulary. So we usually review the photographs after, and then we discuss the objects that are captured in his camera and its associated words. And for parents with a little bit more time, you can actually print out these photos and compile them into a photo album. And this reinforces the learning, where children can actually build lasting memories, and they can revisit this album time and time again. And another funny story of my parental improv skills being tested, I fell into this classic parent trap of asking my son the same old close-ended question, which we're saying not to, every day after school. How's your day? How was school? And I was genuinely curious. And his response was always good, nice. And this went on for the next couple of weeks, and we were not able to break out of that cycle. It was like, no matter what we asked, it was always the same answer. So I mean, I have to give myself props. I thought it was a brilliant idea, but we started this new game, and I said, okay, let's do this. Okay, we are gonna say other words that describe the word good and nice without saying the word good. Of course, it was a little bit challenging at start, because he's like, I don't know what other words to use. So we talked a lot about other words that could describe, maybe think marvelous or wonderful or exciting. Or if you had a bad day, you could say it was boring, it was poor, So I think it was just a lot of making it fun, trying to break out of that cycle. And actually, just 2 days ago, he got in a car, and I asked him, hey, how did school go today? And he just he pondered, and he thought, and then he said, perfect. It went perfect. And I mean, we were all pleasantly surprised, because we don't really use the word perfect all the time. And I thought that, this was a good opportunity to turn something not so great around during our short drive from school to home.
Thank you for that, Natalie. I think this is something that all parents can resonate with. And I love the whole challenge around changing up our words and flipping them into something else as well. I also love the idea you mentioned about using technology and tools to capture our experiences. I feel that children really love using adult tools. And on that note that you just mentioned, Nat, with regards to the poll and busy parents, if we're capturing photographs, that gives us permission as a parent to we might not have time in the moment to unpack everything that we see, but we can look at them again another day. And a photograph can be looked at 1,000 times, and we can notice something different from it every time we look at it. So finding ways to preserve those moments almost, and come back to it when we have time as busy mums and dads, would be another lovely takeaway from what you just shared, Natalie. And it really does just remind me how observant children are. They're noticing things all the time. They're soaking up their environment, and in particular, they're soaking us up, whether we like it or not, and whether we're happy or not, and whether we're busy or not. They are noticing every little thing we do and every little thing that we say. And so that puts an emphasis on us modeling effective communication for our children and being that role model. And I'm just wondering, Natalie, with that tall order, what specific language or behavior should parents focus on at home to model that?
I think we talked a lot about active listening. And I'm sure parents know what I mean. Oh, I have to look at somebody, I have to not acknowledge your feelings. But as a parent, I find it, even myself, I find it extremely challenging. You know, at a day after work, we come back, we follow up with emails or we catch up on our messages. And when a child is like, oh, mommy, you know, this is what I did. Oh, can you play with me? Half the time, we are half invested, right? We're playing with them, and then at the same time, we're looking at our phones. But what active listening looks like is giving your child the full attention. So children these days, you know, they're so aware. They know that you're holding your phone. They know that you're not giving them your undivided attention. And I cannot stress this as a reminder for all of us, even myself, that you know, if we commit that time with our children to engage with them, it's to really cut out all distractions, even if it was a good 5 minutes. Yeah, so I think children really know when parents are actively listening to them. And the next way that we can model, it's, I think, respectful communication. So this is something big at home, that we want to create a safe space for children to express themselves, and also a respectful environment. So parents can model this respectful communication to young children by, you know, just first and foremost, using polite language like please and thank you in the household. So even between other family members other than children, sometimes say, hey, can you pass this to me, you know, without using kind words. So, you know, by demonstrating that kind of kindness and empathy and understanding, you know, parents can foster a positive and respectful relationship with their children, and modeling that sets expectations on how, you know, other people should be treated. And one other part of the poll, a lot of parents voted about sorry, let me just see. Difficulty in understanding a child's perspective or emotions. And sometimes you don't understand why children behave in that manner. And I think for parents, we have to cut ourselves some slack, because, you know, we are not experts all the time. We will not be able to understand why a child is feeling this way or why a child is responding that way. But when we create a safe environment for children, that is the first step to, you know, connecting with them. So first, you know, we can always acknowledge and validate a child's emotions. This helps to build trust, you know, and shows that their feelings are important. For example, if my child is finding it hard to return to school after a long weekend or a long holiday, instead of saying, you know, Gideon, you know that I'm going to be back at the end of the day, right? You know, you'll be okay. Instead, I say, Gideon, I know you are feeling very upset. I know you're feeling very sad, you know, and I know that you miss me. So these are words that's missing from himself. And it's to just tell him that I miss you. I will also be really sad to see you sad. So I think it's really validating and acknowledging those emotions, and getting that connectivity with them.
I love that point, Natalie. I think it's such a great highlight for all of us, that we don't always have to solve everything, but as you said, it's about the validation and the language that we can give children to share how they're feeling, and saying that I know you have a big feeling right now, and I'm here for you. I understand. I feel that way too sometimes, and just normalizing that it's okay to have a bad day or a tough moment. So that's a really lovely emphasis there. And I love your whole attitude towards respectful communication. It really brings me back to past times when older generations might say, do as I say. Well, that's a big no-no in today's parenting world. And how now children quite literally will say what we say. So again comes the onus and emphasis on us to be that great benchmark for politeness, for manners, and for courtesies. And sometimes we might panic or become frustrated as parents when children do not say hello when someone greets them in the elevator. I often get questions about that at school. Someone's greeted my child and they haven't responded. And, you know, I feel a little bit embarrassed or awkward. What should I do? Or maybe when children don't say please or thank you. But it's important, as Natalie just highlighted, all of this takes modeling, it takes time, and it takes practice. And the worst thing to do is to force it. The best thing to do is to demonstrate it ourselves. For example, when I was encouraging my son with his thank yous, I would often model it through daily life. So if somebody said thank you to me in the grocery store, I might say something like, I really like how that lady smiled back at me when I said thank you. And just this morning, we had a little boy from kindergarten. He turned up at the front door of the school quite flustered and said, I've forgotten my water bottle today. I don't know what to do. And we said, it's okay. We can give you a mineral bottle of water. Would you like that? And he said, I would like it. And his mum said, oh, please say please. And then I said to his mum, oh, that just made my heart smile when you said please. And then he said, please. So sometimes not forcing it, but talking about how we feel when people say please and thank you, it would often encourage children to become motivated to want to say it. Chai Yun, would you like to close off this section for us?
Yes, sure. I really enjoy this topic. So I agree with Natalie and Lisa for saying about active listening, expression, and respectful dialogue. So one more pointer to take away is to go to the child's eye level. So we really want to speak to the child at eye level so that they know that we are listening to them, we are present, and we want to keep our mobile phones away so that we are free from distractions. Parents can also paraphrase to ensure that you really understand your child's response to you, and you want to acknowledge their own emotions and experiences. So when we demonstrate these communication skills consistently, we actually provide a positive example for the children to emulate.
Thank you. A lovely question that came through prior to the webinar was around how we can support children in asking questions or explaining their reasoning and solving problems through conversation. So Chai Yun, if we take what you just said and we're actively giving our children body level height, we're giving them a great eye contact, we're showing them that we're present. How else can we support our children then in asking questions or explaining themselves further?
Yeah, so firstly, I think it's important for us to create a nurturing and stimulating environment that encourages the children's curiosity and critical thinking. So parents can actually foster these skills by asking open-ended questions. For example, what do you want to find out about? What are you curious about? And then we want to encourage the children to explain their reasoning behind their thoughts or their actions. And then they will develop their communication skills and confidence. So sometimes children will encounter problems or challenges, and parents can actually guide them through a problem-solving process by asking guiding questions. So we can brainstorm solutions together. For example, I observed in one of the nursery class recently whereby children's chairs are not in the class when they needed it during breakfast time. So the educator actually acknowledged that the chairs are not in the class, but she did not provide the solution for the children. So she actually asked the children, what do you think we can do when there are no chairs in the class? And so then she guided the children to look for the chairs in the school. And this provides the support for children to problem solve instead of solving the problem for them.
Thank you for that lovely practical example there. I think that's quite refreshing for parents to know that we don't always have to solve those situations, and we can say, oh, I wonder what is happening here. I wonder how we can solve the problem together. Let's look around, let's find out more. And it just naturally diffuses the tension in those situations and also buys us valuable time sometimes as well, to figure out where we're going to go to next. And that brings us to some maybe homework almost for mums and dads at home. At school, we often like to send home exciting inquiry projects or extensions of learning over the weekend. And so just inviting Nat and Chai Yun to maybe give us some homework for home. You know, what practical resources or tools can we tap into to further develop our understanding of our children in this area of communication and effective strategies. So feel free to give us our homework, Natalie.
Oh, I don't like the idea of homework. I feel like I would be very pressured if it was homework. So one of the this resource that I used at home was because when my child was a younger toddler, he found it really difficult to express himself. And this book, it's called What to Say When You Don't Know What to Say. And this book is actually made for both adults and children. This book is helps with prompts when you are lost for words, and when you have big feelings and then you just do not know how to express them in words. So these feelings that I mentioned in here are feelings that even us as adults, we go through, and it will be very relatable as you share your experiences with your child when you read this. So I just wanted to give you a little snippet of what this book looks like. So we could see on this page about a little girl who has taken her pet to the vet, and she is comforting her pet. So usually a child might say, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay." But if you want to elaborate on that feelings and that emotions, this book suggests you could say, "Don't be scared. I'll be there too." And another example would be on this page about children at play, and this boy is a little bit hesitant to go and join that social group. And if you ask, if a mom says, "Hey, do you want to go and play with their friends?" and the child would say, "No." So this helps because it helps the child say, "I am feeling shy." So it helps the child express that kind of emotions and the words that they are unable to find inside them. So I thought this was really helpful for us in my family, so it might be helpful for you guys too. Another suggestion is creating a family conversation jar. It's a fun activity at home. It's not a don't take it as a homework. It encourages both children and parents to contribute topics that they would like to discuss or questions that they have by writing them down. Or for younger children, they could actually draw the pictures, draw the topics, and place them in this jar. So parents, it's up to you. You can decide when to use this jar, maybe during dinner or after dinner. And each day you can take turns to pull out a paper from the jar to spark conversations. So the topics could include like, what's the nicest thing someone has done for you, or if your son is really into or your children are really into superheroes, it could be like, if you had a superpower, what would it be? So this is a really interactive jar that can stimulate engaging discussions and bring the family closer together.
Oh, thank you for that, Natalie. It really makes me think of an icebreaker concept as well. It sometimes breaks the ice, doesn't it, when you're sat at the dining table or it's been a busy day, and as a mum and dad, we have every right to feel fatigued and we're not sure where to start with our conversations. So as you were sharing the gorgeous example with the jar, it really made me think this is a great icebreaker for all sorts of situations. And I'm sure Daiso in Singapore and Spotlight and the other hardware shops might be selling out of jars fast after that lovely tip. Thank you so much. It's definitely something I'm going to try with my son at home over the weekend. Chai Yun, would you like to share a little bit further and help us grow our go-to list for practical resources?
Yes, sure, Lisa. So I actually enjoy reading two Instagram pages. First is The Story of Play, and the other one is Our Little Play Nest. So these two Instagram pages actually share a lot of parenting tips for parents to use at home, and it's very, very easy to implement it because they give really practical tips for us. Another good book is The Whole Brain Child by Daniel J. Siegel and Tina Pei Bryson. So this book actually provides valuable insights into the children's cognitive, emotional, and social development. It tells us how the child's brain works. So parents can actually look at this book, and I really think that this is really a good read.
Thank you very much, Chai Yun. I really love your emphasis there around looking at the whole child and brain development. There's a big push, isn't there, ladies, in the education sector that's trending around neuroscience, understanding how the brain develops, understanding how children operate in their typical developmental stages, because then we start to get that aha and that why behind what we're observing. Whether there's a tricky moment for our child and they're feeling a big feeling, or they suddenly startle us with a new behavior, the more that we brush up on our, as Natalie doesn't like to call it, homework around maybe understanding our children's brains and how they function, and we maybe start to help ourselves with understanding the why behind what we are seeing. So do remember as well, mums and dads, that we have our parenting page. If you'd like to jot this down for future, is parenting.etonhouse.edu.sg. And we have lots of ebooks, guides, and podcasts on all things parenting. Ella, feel free to pop that up if you would like to for us. Thank you so much. We would also like you to take a few moments, if you're willing to spare them, to drop in the chat if there's anything you would like to see on our parenting page and platform. We're always growing it with new ideas, new topics, and new resources. So we would like to hear from you if you feel there's anything missing, or if there's a trending question or topic that you have in your mind. We would like to further build that out based on what our community is looking for. So thank you very much. Well, I'm pleased to share that even though all three of us can talk underwater and we love chatting away about these topics, we do have a little bit of time left here for some questions that we can take in from families. And so maybe we can kickstart with a really great question that I can see here that came in prior to the webinar, which was that my son likes to ask the same question over and over, even though he knows the answer. And it feels like an attempt sometimes to get negative attention. So that's a great question. And when Natalie and Chai Yun, myself, talked about this together, we were sharing there could be a whole range of reasons why children might repeat their questions. One of which could be because it's a safe way to enter into conversation. It's a statement or a phrase or a question that they feel very comfortable with, and it's their way of striking up a conversation or a dialogue with other people. If you think about it, we do it sometimes as well. We might have our conversation starters. How was the weather today? How was your weekend? Did you have your lunch? We might repeat certain phrases or questions as well, because it's a safe way to engage with somebody. So it's good to bear that in mind. And then from there, we can really think about how we could change it up a little bit. We could rephrase the question back. So the example was about asking Dad about soccer. So maybe we could talk about soccer, but in another way. We could present the question back to our child and rephrase it. Or we could take a tip that Natalie gave much earlier on in the webinar, where we might say something like, what do you think? What do you think? And that allows maybe our child to think a little bit differently as well. Natalie, Chai Yun, I'm not sure if you would like to add anything in here with regards to repeating the same thing over and over. I think it's something we see all the time. It's a very typical behavior.
Yes, Lisa. I think I feel the same exasperation and frustration to be asked the same question over and over again. And we are tired of answering the same question, and our natural selves tend to want the retort to say, I've told you 100 times, or why do you keep asking me the same question? And children, to just add on to what you said, children may ask questions they already know an answer to because they are able to predict the answer. And sometimes children want that kind of security and predictability. So again, to your tip, it's to ask back the question. Sometimes my son asks me, oh, are we going to Poppy's house, which is his grandpa's house? And I said, what do you think? And he asked me 2 to 3 times on the journey home. And perhaps he just needs that reaffirmation because he's really excited to go. So I usually ask him, so Gideon, where are we going after this? And he would respond, oh, I'm going to Poppy's house. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. Another great question that I can see popping up here would be that my children, or my child, sorry, would be picking up words from school that might not always be appropriate to use. And so how do I go ahead and teach them that this isn't a nice word to use? So again, another really great question there. And I think an interesting thing for us to ponder over would be that, unfortunately, we need to experience good and bad in everything in life to be able to get our own benchmark and measure around whether something is appropriate or not. And so even though it's not desirable, it is inevitable that across our child's journey, they will hear some negative language or maybe negative words that we wouldn't want to form part of their tool belt. But through exposing them to that and almost unpacking what that word means and how it makes us feel, and how might we change up that word and say something different, it allows us to become a bit of a word detective and encourage our children really to interrogate language and to understand for themselves the difference between right and wrong and to make that judgment call. Now, I'm sure we've all been guilty of when our child says something, sometimes we might say, don't say that, that's not a good word to use as a parent, or we mustn't say that word. But I could see Chai Yun and Natalie smile there, because what that tends to do is make it even more desirable. And they might want to say it even more and to try it out with their mouth and how it feels on their lips and with their tongue, because now it's become the taboo word that they have been told not to say. So allowing our child to actually tell us what they've heard, to say the word, but then to unpack it together is incredibly important. And then we can help them with being a word flip master. So if they say, Mummy and Daddy, this particular friend said, I'm not your friend, we could say, well, I wonder how we could change that. We could encourage them to say, I'm not ready to play. Or a little one might say, Mummy and Daddy, somebody said, I don't like you. You're not nice. And of course, as a parent, we will have that visceral reaction because we want our child to experience warmth and be welcomed into play. But in reality, that might happen. And maybe instead we could say, oh, well, if that happens again, maybe we could encourage our friend to say that they're not feeling good. And again, that they're not ready to play. Last one would be if there was a really inappropriate word that I'm not going to say on the webinar today live, but if there was a taboo word, an inappropriate word that might be referred to, for example, as a swear word that comes up, particularly as your child moves into primary and secondary sectors, this could happen, then it's important again to acknowledge that, oh yes, I can see how that word caught your eye, how it's stuck in your memory for today. And I can see that it's a word that you really want to talk more about. And what does it mean? And if it happens again, what could you do? You could say, I'm sad, or please stop, or oh dear, that didn't make me feel good. And through empowering our children to respond to those situations, it avoids them breathing or feeling that something is very wrong. And that's what we want them to do in the future when they become adults as well. Unfortunately, they will be exposed within society to negative language, and we want them to smoothly tackle that as a smooth operator and a great communicator. Chai Yun, Natalie, would you like to add anything into that at all? I think it's something that pops up in all of our schools and with lots of different age groups as well.
Yes, sure. So I totally agree with the strategies you shared with the parents. And whenever a child uses inappropriate words, sometimes they may not understand the meaning behind these words. And probably we can ask them, do you know what does it mean? And then help them to rephrase these words, like what you say, to be a word flip master, and then ask them, what can you say instead? It's also good to ask the children, how did this word make you feel? How do you think the child feel when he said this or that to you? So talking about this and acknowledging that this word is inappropriate with a child helps them to understand that this is inappropriate, and we don't want to just brush it aside, because a child is naturally curious, and if we brush it aside, they may want to continue to use it until they get our affirmation.
Thank you very much. And we have time. You know, I like to squeeze every last drop out of these experiences. So we have time for one final question that I'm going to pop out there. And that would be around that my daughter goes around and around in circles when trying to describe something. And it gets me all distracted and I am unable to listen fully and respond to her. How can I help her to be able to speak in short or concise sentences? So again, this is a really great question. It's something that lots of us might face. And it immediately makes me think of the word brain dump. So our children, because they trust us the most as their parents, they tend to come home and they might engage in what we call a brain dump, which is that everything pours out from them. And, you know, they're sharing about their day. And sometimes it might take them a while to get to the point that they're trying to make, or sometimes they might not know what the point is. And they just want to offer that brain dump and offload, decompress in their nest, which would be home and you, mums and dads. So Natalie, Chai Yun, any pearls of wisdom there around how we can help our children formulate their thoughts. I know, I mean, for me, it comes down to maybe the art of questioning and asking certain questions to help children reshape their thinking. But any practical little direct tips there?
I think it's back to the 10-second pause, you know, giving children the time to formulate, and also the prompting statements would really help children, you know, guiding them in the direction that you want them to go. So I think it's all that you have said, Lisa.
Thank you, Natalie. Really appreciate it. And as you said, maybe with that pause, just turning our head to the side and showing that we're listening and allowing for that brain dump, because it's clearly important for children to be able to do that and to express themselves. I think as they get older, they do become more concise and articulate, don't they? And they do get to the point a lot more quickly. And that comes from having a language-rich environment where we are modeling that as well. Asking particular questions. How did that make you feel? What happened next? How did it end? Those types of questions maybe help our children find a focus at certain points in those narratives as well. Well, we are spot on 1 o'clock, ladies. So we have filled the hour fruitfully, and it's been an amazing session to share together with both of you and all of our families listening online. I'm afraid that is all we have time for today, and apologies if we could not get to your questions, but a huge thank you to Chai Yun and Natalie for their generous sharing and insightful comments. Thank you to our gorgeous viewers who joined us today and you gave us your lunch hour. And we would like to let you know that we will be sending the recording by email, so you can listen to it again. You can share it with friends. We would like to thank you for sharing your Wednesday with us. Take care, stay safe, and most of all, happy parenting. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.